I don't know what the next step is in this Murdaugh mess, but now that we have seen the state's response to Dick and Jim's wild accusations made about Clerk of Court Becky Hill, it is past time that the South Carolina Supreme Court steps in to put a lid on Team Murdaugh's judicial terrorism. Even after all of the blood, sweat, and tears so many have put into this case for so long. Tuesday was an eventful day in the Murdaugh world. Finally, 2 months after Dick and Jim launched their attack on Colleton County Clerk of Court Becky Hill, the state fought back with a fiery motion. We will talk about this response later in the episode because, wow, there's a lot there. But after reading all 48 pages, I started to feel a lump in my throat that I could not shake. I sobbed, thinking about what Dick and Jim did to Becky's reputation, based on such flimsy, terrible evidence. I thought about all of the dozens of horrible headlines I have read about Becky Hill in the last 2 months.
Becky Hill, biased court clerk at Alex Murdaugh trial, admits in new book she worried jury would acquit legal scion of murdering wife and son. The Daily Mail. Murdaugh court clerk hinted at personal relationships during murder trial prior to tampering allegations. Fox News. Alex Murdaugh lawyers claim fame-hungry clerk Rebecca Hill tainted jury. Daily Beast.
It makes me sick how Dick and Jim threw Becky under a bus and the media just ran her over again and again. And speaking of our skewed and corrupt justice system in South Carolina, I quickly want to mention that prosecutor David Miller, the guy who gave thrice-accused rapist Bowen Turner a sweetheart deal, appeared before the Judicial Merit Selection Committee on Wednesday in his quest to become a judge. The JMSC unfortunately chose not to allow streaming of this event, which made it difficult to cover, but we will be getting the transcripts and providing a full rundown of what happened. I was told Wednesday that the hearing was fiery, and let's hope that the JMSC chooses wisely, as the spotlight is on them, and it won't be moving anytime soon. Also, by the way, Bowen Turner will be released from prison next week.
Remember the letter that 9 of our 16 chief prosecutors in the state sent to Speaker of the House Merle Smith and Senate Majority Leader Luke Rankin a few weeks ago? The unprecedented one that implored them to remove lawyer legislator Todd Rutherford from the JMSC, along with other lawyer legislators. Surely because they're not just elected officials, but the elected leaders of our elected lawmakers. They've had enough time by now to acknowledge said letter and fashion up some sort of respectful response, right? The South Carolina Court of Appeals has decided that Corey Fleming, Alex's best co-conspirator, can go forward with his appeal. Remember that after he pleaded guilty to 21 state charges, wrongly thinking that he could trick the system and get the court to bend to his will and sentence him to basically nothing, he appealed the 13-year, 10-month sentence Judge Newman had given him, claiming that Judge Newman was biased. Obviously, someone who pleads guilty to their crimes doesn't typically get to appeal their sentence because they're pleading guilty with the understanding that even if the prosecution recommends a light sentence, it's ultimately up to the judge. Okay, it's time to burn down Dick and Jim's village. On Tuesday morning, South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson and his team came out with the biggest of Big Creighton Energy and filed a 12-alarm fire of a response to Team Murdaugh's motion for a new trial. You need to stop and just take a breath because there is a false equivalency happening here, and it is a trapdoor that we want to nail shut once and for all. Alex Murdaugh is a judicial terrorist. His claims have been very carefully designed to be misleading. The accusations that this legal bandit has been making were crafted for the headlines. They were written in such a way that even generally reasonable people who are familiar with South Carolina's justice system and who know Alex is a murderer and a thief and a liar, and who know that his legal team is prone to hyperbole and misdirection, and will stop at nothing could find themselves momentarily fooled by the antics.
The other big thing that happened is the state's response to Dick and Jim's motion for a new trial. Let's start by talking about Becky Hill's 3-page affidavit. She, an officer of the court who understands the severity of perjury more than most, she has sworn to it under oath. This affidavit is attached to the state's response, which ultimately asks the court to not only deny Dick and Jim an evidentiary hearing to see if a new trial is warranted, but to skip to the good part and deny them a new trial altogether. The state has 10 written statements from jurors attached to its response. That means that 3 are missing, right? One of those 3 is Juror 578, who declined to discuss the case or deliberations with SLED. According to our notes, Juror 578 is a white male contractor who said he had never heard of the Alex Murdaugh case before the trial. The only other one who doesn't have a written statement is Juror 630, who, like the Egg Lady juror, is represented by Dick's friend and consistent murder trial attendee, Joe McCullough. Again, Juror 741, one of the 2 jurors who didn't sign an affidavit for Dick and Jim, but whose statements were contained in an affidavit from Dick's assistant, was an alternate, so there isn't even a written statement from her in the state filing. Juror 741, however, did speak to SLED. The other juror who didn't sign an affidavit for Dick and Jim, Juror 326, spoke to SLED and also provided a written statement to SLED.
Here's Creighton Waters on January 25th.
You're going to see video statements of Alex Murdaugh. You're going to see body-worn camera of him at the scene when law enforcement arrives. And hear what he says. Hear what he says about that night. You're going to hear 3 recorded statements on video that he gave with law enforcement, and you're going to hear how things progress about what he says, what he says he did that night.
Another thing to know about Juror 630, she never says that Becky's alleged words influenced her verdict. Instead, she says that she felt pressured by other jurors.
Let's talk about the star of Dick and Jim's show, Juror 785, the Egg Lady juror. From the get-go, we've told you about how this entire set of accusations coming from the Egg Lady juror was a waste of time. She did not render a verdict in Alex's case, and she was not removed from the jury as a result of anything Becky said or did. In her affidavit to Dick and Jim, she accused Becky of having inappropriate conversation with her about the opinions on Alex's guilt. She also says that her tenants, not Juror 630, but the ones who signed affidavits in late February telling the court that she had spoken to them about the trial, have since denied saying what they said and that they felt pressured to do so by SLED. Let's pause there, okay? One of the accusations made in the writ of prohibition against Judge Newman is that Judge Newman is biased because he commented during Alex's sentencing that law enforcement has been maligned for the past 5 or 6 weeks. This is what that looks like, okay? Dick sat in that in-camera hearing with the tenants who testified that, against a court order, Juror 785 had spoken about the case. Not only that, Dick questioned one of the tenants and asked for clarification about what he meant in his affidavit. And not only that, Dick watched a video of their interviews with SLED. Then, months later, in arguing that the clerk of court engaged in jury tampering, he takes the position that these affidavits were coerced and that the tenants denied saying these things. If the state's revelations do not inspire the Supreme Court to finally put a hammer on Dick and Jim for their reckless claims and unsupported accusations and just the overall chaos they have created in this case, then I hope there are lawyers out there right now paying very close attention, because Becky Hill does not deserve this. Those jurors do not deserve this. The judicial terrorism will continue as long as the Supreme Court allows it. We will have to wait and see. Stay tuned, stay pesky, and stay in the sunlight.